Hey everyone, Nick Engvall here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about some of the people that make the sneaker history community and this podcast possible. It's more important than ever to think about who you give your money to when you're buying clothing to go with your kicks. Our friends at Guilty Goods started their brand with a goal of giving back, especially to the communities that make sneaker culture possible. With every purchase from Guilty Goods, at least 10% of the proceeds are donated to organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, the Movement for Black Lives, and many more. You can save 30% on your order by using the code HISTORY at guiltygoods.us. Again, that's history at guiltygoods.us for 30% off, and you can feel good about your purchase knowing you're supporting a meaningful cause. Sneakers are all about presentation, and if you're like me, displaying your kicks at home or in the office is just as important as when they're on your feet. Sneaker Throne makes sneaker display cases featuring customizable LED lights, drop-side cases to showcase the entire side of the shoe, not just the heel or the toe, the whole shoe. They've also got display cases for trading card collectors and hat collectors. To me, it's the perfect way to display your collection. You can save at least 10% on your Sneaker Throne order by using the code HISTORY at sneakerthrone.com. That's history at sneakerthrone.com. If you're a Patreon supporter or a member of our Discord community, you already know about Kicks with V hot sauce and his small batch, locally sourced hot sauce. V has been one of the biggest supporters of sneaker history and the podcast since the early days. He's currently the defending champion in our community trivia nights competition. Kicks with V hot sauce has been a huge hit with the community. You can save 10% on your order by using the code SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. That's SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. Now, you're probably here because you like sneakers, and if you join the Discord, you know our community is about so much more than that. Whether it's the marathon-like community calls, trivia night debates, the in-person meetups, or just sharing our favorite experiences, we found that although we have such different backgrounds, we all have some unexpected shared passions. Not only does the entire community look out for each other when it comes to releases, we're like a support group for life in general. You can join the Discord community for free by heading to the show notes of this episode. After you're done listening to this episode, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Now let's get into today's episode.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a James with no regard for human life. Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
What up, what up? My name is Nick Engvall, and this is the Sneaker History Podcast. For me, sneakers has never really been about the shoes. It's been about the people. Sneakers have been the connection to friends, business partners, unforgettable stories and memories, and opportunities that I could have never imagined. My goal has always been to create something that opens doors for others to find ways to do something they're passionate about for a living. If you're already a member of the Sneaker History Discord, you know how great the community we have is. It's so much more than sneakers. When someone needs some help getting through a tough time, the community is there. When someone in the community drops a new product line or publishes their first YouTube video, everyone is quick to support. That's why this year we'll be launching a series of new podcasts directly from the community. The first is a Formula One focused podcast hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates, where we hope to make becoming an F1 fan a little easier and give you a better understanding of the sport, whether you're just starting to watch or a longtime fan. You can check it out at exhaustnotes.fm or linked in the description for this episode. As always, thank you for supporting Sneaker History, and don't forget to tell someone you like their kicks today. What up, what up? Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast. My name is Nick Engvall. Today, I got a good friend on here with me that this is like years overdue. And I'll just introduce Will as probably one of the kindest people I've met in this whole sneaker journey. He and I and Jacques Slade have become really good friends over the years, working together on various projects. But he's been around, and he's one of those people that, one, I admire just for the human being he is, but two, I admire because he's able to stay off of social media and stay out of the sneaker buying addiction that I have and still am trying to deal with. But Will, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. I appreciate you slumming down this low to invite me on. Nobody has a clue who I am, which is totally fine by me. But yeah, man, it's been a whirlwind getting to know you and Jacques as well. And I think even Jacques was trolling my wife's birthday post the other day when I called her my best friend. And he was like, what? I thought me and Nick were your best friends. And I really wanted to reply back, y'all don't kiss me like she does. But yeah, dude, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And just I would love to dive into that story too later on, but how we've kind of connected. But yeah, dude, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Like I said, it's been long overdue. I feel like we've had a lot of conversations about projects we've been working on, things we're doing, looking out for each other. But we really haven't had a lot of conversations about sneakers, which was kind of the thing that connected us in the very beginning. But
yeah,
that's how it is, though. Once you actually get past the sneaker thing, it's like, oh, you know, the important conversations happen, you know, like when you really care about people, you kind of avoid the topic of sneakers in a lot of ways. But it's cool to be able to kind of jump back to that and hear some of your stories, because I know you've got some great ones especially from the pre-NikeTalk days even.
Oh, yeah, man. Plenty of stories. And then, yeah, dude, that's true, man. I mean, just getting past, like, obviously sneakers are the reason why a lot of us connect, right? But I've still got people that I've met, you know, back in the 90s when I was 13, 14, 15 years old that still have them in my phone today and text. And it's not about sneakers. It's about how old's your daughter now, or, you know, all that good stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it's cool to see, man.
Definitely. Totally agree. And same for me. I mean, I probably a majority of my phone, you know, contacts came from sneakers at some point or another, but
yeah,
I rarely even have those conversations other than like this, you know, like this is kind of the place where I get to like dive back into that nostalgia. But I guess like for people that don't know you, give a little background on who you are and how you originally got into sneakers.
Sure. Well, like I said, I'm nobody special. I'm just a kid that was growing up in Indiana at the time. And really, it was probably when I was in middle school and just saw just the style and the design of Air Jordans. And it was clearly like when Jordan and, you know, Rodman and Pippen and they were all doing their thing, you know, the whole Last Dance, you know, was basically when I was growing up and, you know, going through middle school. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, it was cool if you know, obviously everybody knows this. Like if you had the latest pair of Air Jordans, like, man, yeah, that's awesome. Like, yep. A, you had that disposable money. B, like somewhere down the line, your parents let you skip first period, or they went and got them for you because Jordans actually physically came out in stores back then, believe it or not, and came out like on Wednesdays, right? So in stores like Finish Line and Foot Locker would open at like 7 a.m. so kids could come in and get them and then still go to school. But I'll tell you, what really drew me was the internet. And it's weird to say, but this was, you know, way back in the day. My parents got a gateway computer that sounded like a friggin' spaceship took off when it like started up, right? So I log on to the internet and just start poking around and look at Nike.com and started poking around there, and then started to make my way into these like little fan websites and stumbled on places like Alex Wang's website, 23 Jumpman Street, then turned into Retro Kid. Now he's working at Nike. Crazy story there. But, you know, these other like Dingo's Nike News wrap up, all these randoms, even like alternate sneakers, which I think still exists, Japanese website. I just found this little hole of this online community that loves sneakers. And I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, I want to be in this. Like, I want to do this. This is awesome. So I stumbled on Nike Park. This was pre-NikeTalk. I stumbled on Nike Park, and that was sort of the place where everybody hung out. They had a message board forum, and people would post and talk about sneakers. I was like, man, this is so cool. And so I wanted to start my own website. So I started it, and, you know, really cool name. No Name Nike Page was the first iteration of my website. So really clever, really cool. Then it turned into Will's Nike Page, and then eventually a website called Shoe Center. And, you know, would do the same thing everybody else was doing and hunting for a source. Like everybody, like it was not, you know, believe it or not cool to rip off somebody else's news, right? So now blogs all post the same stuff and this and that and the other. But the way you drove traffic is if you like figured out how to break news and had exclusive content. And only a few ways to do that, right? Know somebody that works at Nike, or, have a friend that like works at a Foot Locker and he gives you the fall catalog and you scan images, all that good stuff. But yeah, man, just kind of started connecting, networking. I'm 13 at the time. Started going into like website chat rooms and, about sneakers. And one evening, this is kind of where it all turned. One evening, I'm in a chat room called Hype Site Chat, ran by the website was ran by a dude named Joe Galvin. He's still around kind of today. I think he works for Pony or something like that. But this dude was in there just talking about all these samples that he owned and all these player exclusives and all this stuff. And so I remember I was in that chat room. I was like, this guy's crazy. Like, there's no way he has this stuff. I'm talking like Tim Duncan player samples, Jordan samples, like look-see colorways that no one's ever even heard of, all this stuff. And so back then you could kind of side chat somebody and it's like sliding into somebody's DMs, right? So I slid into his DM and I was like, yo, dude, there's no way, man. Like, there's no way you have this. And he's like, all right, man, I'll prove it to you. Like, I'll sell you some of them. All right. I have a pair of Air Jordan Retro 5, white and silver samples. I'll sell you for $250. Oh man. Okay. I don't have $250, right? I'm 13. So like I run downstairs. So I'm upstairs in like a guest room, run downstairs. Dad, like you will never believe the opportunity that I have, right? I need to borrow $250 to buy a pair of shoes. And he looked at me and he's like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, what do you need $250 pair of shoes for? And I was like, Dad, I think, man, I can sell them for like $750. And he's like, all right, son. He's like, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm going to loan you the $250, whether you get scammed or they're whatever, fake or whatever. If this does not pan out, obviously you're going to owe me $250 no matter what. You're cutting the yard all summer. You're paying me back. And before he can even get all that, I'm already back upstairs. Like, all right, dude, I'll take him. So I'll really date myself, which is sort of how all this went down. There was no Venmo, right? There's no PayPal. There's no nothing. So I go to the bank and get $250 out, then go to CVS and get a money order, and then snail mail a money order to this guy. And yes, lo and behold, pair of shoes show up, and they're in fact a real authentic pair of samples. Size 9, right? And I was like, man, score. This is awesome. So then I take a Kodak disposable camera and take a photo of said shoes, and then took like 24 other random photos to kill the roll. Go back to CVS, have them developed. I know I'm really dating myself, but go to CVS, have them developed, get them scanned. They used to have those like Kodak, like scanners that you could do at CVS. Took a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Yep. Put that bad boy into the scanner and saved one image on that 3.5-inch floppy. Rode my bike back home, put it into that gateway computer, dialed up the internet, and posted them for sale on Nike Park for $750. Now, meanwhile, and yeah, sorry, you asked me one question, and here I am diving into this whole thing.
No, but it also took probably like 6 hours for that image to get uploaded back then too.
Oh my goodness, yes. I put it in there, and then I went to sleep, and I woke back up, and then it was still like just 90% done. It's the reality we lived in back then. All these kids these days, they just snap a photo on their phone and boom. So I posted on Nike Park, but on the side, there was a gentleman, I think he was in college at the time, and his website, if y'all remember, was Jersey Joe. And Jersey Joe had a connection. He had samples. He had rare sneakers. He sold some jerseys at the time, like Mitchell and Ness stuff. Nice guy, and offered to sell the shoes for me. Him and I would kind of chat on the side, AOL Instant Messenger type of stuff. And he's like, yo, dude, I'll sell them for you, and I'll, take a cut and whatever, I'll help you out. So I posted on Nike Park. I have sent him the shoes, and so they're out of my possession. They're on the way to Joe. And I get an email from a Hiroshi Senju from Hiroshima, Japan. And he goes, I'll take them. $750 plus $30 shipping to Japan. Dad, I just sold those $250 shoes in a matter of like 20 minutes, $750 over to some dude in Japan. And he just looked at me and he was like, I got one question for you. He's like, how many more of those can you get? Right. And I was like, I have no idea, but I'm going to figure this out. So I got the shoes back from Joe. Long story short, I'll spare you all the extra details, but yeah, man, sent the shoes, like got the money order from Japan and sent the shoes over and everything worked out. And Andy Chang was the gentleman that was inside of the chat room. And it turns out that he was renting a basement room from one of the directors of Nike basketball. And he would just come home with duffel bags full of samples, player samples, look-see samples, all sorts of stuff, and give them to Andy. And Andy would sell them to me for $100 a pop moving forward. And I would sell. Hiroshi actually became one of my best customers. And it's funny because Joe was like, oh, man, that's a dude that I sell to a lot. Like, how the heck did you find him? Like, you don't need me. And I mean, I would get probably a dozen pairs a month, paying $100, and I'd sell 90% of them to this Japanese collector, $1,500, $1,200, $1,000 a pop. And nowadays that's nothing for sneakers. Well, relatively speaking, it's still a ton of money. But back then, as a 15-year-old, $1,500 for one pair of shoes was insane, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, that's kind of how it all started, and just kept hunting and figuring it out, and found a few more little sources, and would go to Nike outlets and source things, and just spent, honestly, man, my childhood just wheeling and dealing on the internet, peddling sneakers.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, and I've seen some of the pictures you've had just some crazy stuff, right? Like, I mean, always the shoe that comes to mind is the Tar Heels Jumpman. You know,
the Showcase, Team Showcase.
Showcase.
Yeah,
because like that was one of those shoes that was like the first time I remember seeing a shoe kind of on. You know, I'm always watching college basketball. I've been a big college basketball fan most of my life, but when I was younger, I was like really into college basketball. And I remember seeing the guys wearing the shoes and being like, "That's different. Like that's not what I'm seeing at Foot Locker." You know, like it was crazy different. And then when we first connected and you know, you started sharing some pictures, it was like, whoa, this is like the stuff that like dreams are made of for kids our age, you know, back then. Right. Because even occasionally, you know, like you might see a colorway land in the East Bay catalog back then, but you wouldn't see like a PE or a sample. And like, you know, really, there were only a handful of people that even got to see those things back then. You know, like you might post something on NikeTalk once it got up and running, but like, you know, Russ Bankston and the Slam team were like the only ones that really had that kind of access, you know, until, you know, Soul Collector came around, and, you know, that kind of the next generation of, you know, kind of people becoming interested, and like, you know, that shift from like Nike Park to NikeTalk, and where everything kind of became centralized for a few years, right? It was like, if you were on the internet in 2000 and you wanted to talk about sneakers, you ended up on NikeTalk somehow. That was just how it was. But yeah, that's crazy, man. I mean, it's even crazier because you know, we just don't even think about some of those nuances of that story, right? Having to ship shoes to Japan back then was probably a complete pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Having to trust that somebody's going to actually send a money order or receive the money order you're sending in the mail and actually send you product. It's like, you know, like that was also like the time for the internet where the internet existed, but it wasn't fast. There was no real social media, right? It was like GeoCities and MySpace and, you know, that kind of thing. But commerce never happened on the internet. And the companies that were trying to push commerce, you know, like I think of like Webvan and places like that, where it's like, oh, Webvan's going to deliver our groceries one day. Yep. And they absolutely tanked right around, you know, year 2000, shortly after,
because everybody's like, I don't want my credit card information on the internet, and then now look at, we've got, millions of companies that do exactly what those companies were just way ahead of the curve at. So pretty wild.
Yeah, it's insane, man. I mean, just how far everything has come. And you and I were talking kind of pre-doing this, and you've read some of the Bobby Hundred's book, and I'm about 150 pages in, and it's just like, yeah, dude, that's how I built my website on Dreamweaver and like uploaded HTML and didn't know I had
Microsoft front page. Yeah.
Front page. Oh, God bless you, Nick. Yes, that is old school, but a pirated version of Photoshop, right? Like just the way we did it. And I mean, nobody could afford a $3,000 program. So we, ran around and did all that. And then, just the struggles with, okay, how can I take money? Like PayPal was like brand new, and there was no way to put inventory in there, and just the same, and you just figured it out. And, there was nobody told you how to do anything. You just had that passion to just go on and be like, I want to do this, and I'm just going to figure it out until I get it.
Yep. Yeah. It's wild, man. I never really, I think we all kind of get nostalgic about things, but then you don't really think of like the levels that we've, stepped up throughout the years across all these different things that just make this same kind of stuff so easy. Right. And I've been lucky to be a part of all this sneaker stuff, and, the blessing and the curse, it's like when you work in the sneaker world, you spend more money on sneakers.
Yeah.
No matter what, you're going to spend more money. It's like, even if you're one of those people that's lucky enough to get sent a free pair of shoes, it makes you want to buy another pair. It's like, It's just this weird trap that you fall into, and it's a fun one. Don't get me wrong. It's not all a bad thing, but it's definitely an interesting, kind of like unspoken thing about the sneaker world and working in it. And, as it's changed so much through the years, it also is like, it's also the same, right? Like, I think you and I probably have a fundamental belief that not to be cliche, but it's not about the shoes, right? It's the people that you meet, right?
Yep.
Like you remember a few of the shoes that you sold, but you're going to remember the people that you met and connected with and had dinner with and, met at, whatever event. And those types of things are what really kind of, it's kind of why I'm still trying to do this whole thing, right? It even for me, like meeting younger sneaker heads that want to be a part of it or want to start their own business. It's just, that's the exciting part for me, is like finding those people that still have that passion, or maybe they moved on and, do other things, but then you get to have these conversations, right? You're not like as heavily involved in sneakers now as you were even just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But you still have that passion, and you still get to have these cool conversations and connect with people and share these kind of stories. But yeah, I mean, I think like the other thing that's really interesting about, Nike Park is something that I think probably most people now have never heard of, right? NikeTalk was like the anomaly in the sense that it was like the old school message board that survives all of the internet apocalypse that shut down every little like mom and pop shop, right? Like, I'm sure you mentioned a few names, and I think people should probably go back and Google all those. But then I was thinking, honestly, you might not even find much on Jersey Joe. You might not even find much on, Nike Park. A lot of these sites just went completely different direction. And the people are probably still around doing things close or related, but they just, they evolve into kind of this new world of social media first everything, right? Which is, it's tough because you lose a lot of the uniqueness and, the real connection through social media versus like when you were in a forum and you had to like figure out who the person was and like you said, side chat somebody and be like, okay, like, is this person cool enough, safe enough to meet up and buy and sell a pair of shoes, because I was thinking about, as you were telling the story of somebody telling you they had the shoes, like that's basically like the sneakerhead equivalent of like the kid, the creeper van and the candy. We've got some candy, little kid,
Oh,
come
yeah.
into the
Yeah.
van. Because like we were all seeking out those like oddball shoes that we could be like, this is different, right? And, you know, not to get all like old man yelling at the cloud, but like now it doesn't feel like that. You know, it feels like we're missing the chase for that kind of different stuff, right? Like it was all sneakers and it was all like stuff that we had the shared passion for, but we were all kind of looking to be just slightly different. And now I feel like we've gotten to this point where, you know, maybe it's just because there's massive amounts of people involved in it and it's no longer like, you know, a few hundred people
Yep.
that are, you know, kind of congregating in a, you know, online community someplace. But there doesn't seem to be the desire for, you know, I guess standing out from the crowd near as much as it was when, you know, like I think for you and I, the first, you know, time we put on a pair of Jordans or something, it felt like you're like one of the only ones that got to do this, even though, you know, like maybe a few kids at school did too. The majority of people had no even thought or care of what shoes were on their feet.
Yep. Yeah, I think, you know, yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like the old man yelling, you know, hey, kids, get off my lawn and all that stuff. But, you know, I think about this all the time, man. It was kind of like those good old days. But I also look at everything else. And I'm sure, you know, like take my dad, for example, I'm sure, I mean, he's a big, huge baseball fan. I'm sure he would say today, the game's nothing like it used to be and, you know, all that stuff. And so I think of, you know, everything goes through its phases and runs its course and grows and all that. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, I can't sit here and even come close to getting mad at the kids for like running bots and snagging them and selling them on StockX or whatever and making money. Because in a sense, that's what I did, right? Like
Yeah.
I've hunted for a rare sneaker or a sample and sold it for buco money, and that's the same thing these kids are doing. I just didn't do it at like buying 1,000 pairs of them with some internet bot. You know, it was one-offs, and I could get 2 of this and 1 of over here. But you're
It's
right. I
interesting.
mean,
Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I mean, just the connections and everything, you know, it was more just about that than, yeah, it was fun and the chase and the hunt. And, you know, my parents would let me skip first period and they'd drive me to the mall, and my mom would wait in the, you know, car, and I'd run in, and it's the same thing, man. I mean, just the way that like people now say, oh man, you got backdoored at this one store, this and that and the other. I did it too. Back when I was in middle school, I'd make buddies with the security guard. Security guard would let me in the mall a little bit earlier than the rest of them. So I was always first in line, right? And it's the same thing. It's just a different way of looking at it. But it felt different. I'll give you that. I mean, it felt a little different of that real human interaction, connection. And you're right, man. I mean, I still keep up with the guy that founded Nike Park. His name is Eric, and he works for TikTok now. And him and I keep in touch. And I think Jersey Joe's an insurance salesman. So we all move on and do different things. But I think you know, there's things where I could say, man, it's grown and it's terrible for the game, or sneaker, if you want to call it a game, like it's sneaker collecting. But I think there's a lot of things that, you know, are also positive. I think now, you know, there's more releases, which some would say, man, that's too many, but it gives people access to sneakers that they never could get, or more opportunities to have a variety of a collection. Whereas, you know, back in the day when Jordan Brand, he had a, you know, signature shoe, it was, you got 4 colorways, right? And if you didn't like the Chicago Bull colors, you had 1 French blue University of North Carolina color out of the whole year that was coming out that like was, you know, the one that you wanted to get. But other than that, you were stuck with black and red.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, the other interesting thing too, and like thinking in hindsight, you know, that experience of, you know, just learning to navigate the process of getting shoes, selling them, shipping them, all of that, right, becomes so valuable in your career, regardless of where you go, right? Because like some people don't ever have that experience, right? And, you know, nowadays it's much more of a norm, I think. Mm-hmm. But I think that, you know, as things transition into kind of this new world that we live in now, comparatively, you know, that kind of like entrepreneurial aspect of what you were doing as a youngster it probably sets you on course to do a lot of the work that you do now. And, you know, you probably can reference a lot of stuff you learned from the very beginning of your career there, you know, calling it, you know, your 13 selling sneakers, the beginning of your career. I don't know if that would be an official way to approach it, but like, you know, I think that that's something that oftentimes gets like, you know, just kind of pushed under the rug in a lot of conversations. So I think it's cool that, you know, to think about that now, because there's just you know, it's just a good experience to like, you know, do these things. And, you know, to your story in that example, right? Like, I admire your dad and just being like, look, you're either going to learn the lesson or you're not, right?
Yeah.
If it works, it works. It's great, but it's going to be a lesson and it's going to be expensive if you miss out on it. And, you know, that's like, you know, that's how it's got to be, right? Like, we all have to figure that stuff out, whether it's, you know, we can be handed the instruction manual, but we got to figure out how to do this stuff. It's still like much bigger picture relevant, I think, than just sneakers too. It's kind of interesting. Oh
yeah, man. I mean, it just, and look, I mean, I get it. Like, you know, I mean, not many people are going to sit here and say, oh, that's cool, your dad gave you $250, man. Like, good for you. Right. But like, you know, I mean, I see that side of it too, and very appreciative that he did do that, because it set me on a path of like, you know, building that website and learning those skills and figuring it out. And it really did set me up. I mean, before I took a full-time job, I mean, I basically built websites for people throughout college. And then after college, built websites for people and did marketing and did it for 15 years until I got a random phone call one day and said, hey, you don't know me, but my husband knows you and knows that you're a giant sneakerhead and you also understand marketing. I'm a recruiter and I cannot place anybody in this role. And I want to talk to you about a potential role if you're interested. And I said, you have my attention. Go on. You said sneakers and marketing. I'm still listening. I haven't hung up. Yep. But that's how you and I met. You know, I took a job working. The parent company was Implus, and they sold insoles. Trying to even remember the name of the insole company, but basically everybody has seen every single product that Implus sells inside a Foot Locker and Finish Line and every single mall sneaker store. They basically sold sneaker accessories, sneaker balls, insoles, cleaner, and then the brand that I was managing was called ForceField, and I came on as a brand manager, ended up going into global brand manager and handled like all the stores over Foot Locker Europe and all that. But basically ForceField was Implus's answer to Jason Mark and Reshoevn8er and all those guys and Crep. It was Soft Sole. Soft Sole is the name of the insole company.
That's right.
And They have some no-name kind of brand cleaner, value-based cleaner. But yeah, ForceField was basically born out of a meeting between Foot Locker and Implus. And Jason Mark and all these guys were kind of coming in on that territory. And basically Foot Locker looked at them and said, what's y'all's answer? Do y'all have an answer to this kind of sneakerhead, cool, hip, you know, premium cleaner? And they really didn't have one, but they said, yeah, we do, you know, and they didn't have ForceField at the time. So they ran back home and figured out how to make ForceField, which between me, you, and everybody that's listening to this podcast is pretty much the same formula that you find in the Soft Sole value cleaner. Is just branded and put into a different can. So yeah, you can buy the Soft Sole stuff and be just fine.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot of that in the sneaker cleaner world. You know, I think there's not too much that needs to be changed across these formulas and brands, you know, and like maybe there's a few that do something maybe a little bit different and it's like maybe a little better for the environment. But generally speaking, like they all kind of get the job done. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of like who's got the coolest partners, who looks the coolest, who has the, you know, I mean, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but, you know, Crep did the whole like send sneakers to space thing. And, you know, they have like the craziest marketing I've ever seen for any type of product that costs 10 or 12 bucks. You know, it's like
those guys were decking out G-Wagons and like armored vehicles and showing up to Sneaker Con. And like, it's interesting, right? Like you can look at that and you go, okay, holy cow. Like, all right. And this is my biggest challenge when I was at ForceField. You got Jason Mark over here, this premium boutique. You can get it in Nordstrom. You could get it in a Hundreds store. I mean, and, but you could also still buy it in Foot Locker. And it just has this clean feel to it, right? Well, we really can't go down that lane. They're doing that. Then you go over here and Crep is like the loud, obnoxious, marketing, gimmicky, like let's put a dude in $1,000 sneakers and put him on a dirt bike and just tear him through the mud. That's not how people wear sneakers, but it was that shock marketing, right? And then that kind of left like, okay, both of those ends of the spectrum are covered. You know what? Our lane is right in the middle. Our lane is that true sneakerhead, me and you, been collecting for forever, appealing to that. We don't need to do the shock and awe marketing, and we're not going to be sold in Nordstrom's. We're just the average sneaker dude or girl that comes in and they buy a pair of Jordans or whatever. And it's like, oh, hey, by the way, here's a way you can protect and clean them. And it's right in that middle lane. And it actually was a wide open space because the other two were going so far extreme. They left a whole lot of room in the middle.
Yep. Totally. Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I mean, I was trying to think as we were getting ready to record, I was trying to think of like how long ago that was. It was like a solid like 3, 4, 5 years ago now. Like time just is flying.
Yep. Yeah. It's been probably 4 years. We've got a little girl now that'll be 4 in July, and she was 2 months old when I left M Plus.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. One of the other things that we should probably get into, you've mentioned Bobby Hundred's book, which I got to finish. I got to finish it, but I think even just, from what I've read so far, I'm a fan of Bobby anyway. I went and saw him speak at a couple of events in LA when I was living there. I think he really is his passion and authenticity is like unparalleled. There are a lot of people that are passionate, but like he just always comes across as like, hey, this is what I do and this is who I am, and like not in an egotistical way. And I really admire that. And I think that is kind of, it's almost like having the self-awareness to be able to say, yeah, like I nerd out about NikeTalk, or I nerd out about Garfield, Back to the Future, Animaniacs, take your pick, right? Because that's how the Hundreds works. Like they just get into all those things that they loved throughout the years and the nostalgia. And it's like, can they go back and partner with those brands to bring them to the streetwear world? And I think that's just such a great formula, because inevitably we all have like memories that are tied to a lot of these things, right? We won't always be into everything they do, but when they hit the Fresh Prince or whatever it is that whoever's listening, whenever you hit that passion and like, oh, that's the thing, the Hundreds has usually done that. And they've done just such a great job of like continuing those relationships. But specifically, you mentioned reading his book and basically saying on Twitter that there should be a NikeTalk reunion and him agreeing to it or whatnot. And I think that is like, that just needs to happen, because it's really interesting now. Like there's probably, I have a NikeTalk login, but I'm not regularly logging into NikeTalk the way I used to. Yeah. I probably interact with, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the NikeTalk account on Instagram. Oh,
Nelson.
Right? Nelson. On Instagram, once a week, maybe even more, because it's just like part of my regular rounds posting sneaker history and stuff. But there's so many people that from those early days that, are probably still floating around and almost like lost in the new world of what social media is. But I also think there's something to be celebrated about all of the people keeping these relationships. Like to me, that's like my favorite part about, for me, like I was on NikeTalk first, but I definitely, I took a job with Soul Collector in the, I don't know, 2000 something. But so I was like in the the ISS forums and part of the Soul Collectors staff.
The great battle between the two forums.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's just in hindsight, it's just like, how did this even happen? You know, but I totally understand it. Like everybody's kind of fighting for position, trying to say, hey, come over here and be a part of our thing.
Yep.
But yeah,
I think, man, it's interesting. I'll even go one, and this is just where my mind goes, and just reading Bobby's book. And I do agree we need to do something. But I go back to, man, like Nike Park. And so if for those listening, if you haven't read Bobby's book, pick it up. Like if you're just even remotely interested in a cool story, how somebody built something from nothing, some business lessons, entrepreneurship stuff along the way. Like it's like, I'm only 150 pages in, but like, I can't, obviously what I'm gonna do after we finish this, I'm gonna go read until I can't keep my eyes open. It's just, I'm just, eating it up.
Yeah,
but
I'll link to it in the description wherever you're listening to this too. So
grab it. Make sure you guys grab it. Cause I mean, it's legit. And so he kind of talks about, he's trying to find his way and figuring this out. And forgive me if I don't get it all right, but he stumbles on NikeTalk, and he kind of has a whole, like almost half a chapter dedicated to NikeTalk and talking about kind of the what did you wear today, or outfit of the day posts. And what they would do is that they would put their stuff in that post. Then I remember seeing it, and my mind just works in this way where I go, man, okay, if that was sort of one of their turning points of their brand using NikeTalk, then I go back to, if the dude that started, if Eric didn't ever start Nike Park, and people then got like fed up with, like, there was no moderators on the message board for his site. And if Nelson and Alex, who goes by Method Man, and those guys didn't say, hey, let's go start this other thing and build it up, man, you could almost kind of, and this, I know this is a far stretch, but you can almost say, if Eric never built Nike Park and Nike Park never turned out NikeTalk, the hundreds may have never have like turned that little inch up, right? Like, because they never could have used NikeTalk to boost their brand a little bit. Anyway, that's just where my mind goes on all that stuff, and just kind of goes down a rabbit hole. Crazy. But I think, man, we should do something, because I think it would be unique to have the guys like Nelson and Alex, and then Alex Wang of 23 Jumpman Street, and you got Eakin and Russ and King Crux, who was on there, and Ijapino, who goes, Corey, all those like OG like sneaker guys, right? And Bobby and even Benny Gold and all those names. You put those Todd guys in.
I need to get him on. I need to get a lot of these guys on the show.
Yeah,
too.
We just make a giant list and just do it. You get all those guys in the room, right? And then you get a handful of the foamers. And, I know Slade's been in it a long time, but maybe not since 1999. But you get him in a room, and Foamer, and, these influencers, quote unquote, now that are doing kind of their things, blanking on some of the others that are out there, but there's a handful of them, right? And it's kind of like old school meets new school. And, and I look at people like, Jacques, and say, dude, you're carrying the torch, man, forward, right? Like, yeah, you might not have been in it since 1999 and, had dial-up internet with us and on NikeTalk, but like what he does and like what Foamer does and all those guys, like they're bringing a different life of content and storytelling, which is to me what it's all about, right? And Bobby kind of talks about all that, like, yeah, I blog about all this stuff because I love it. And I want people to feel a sense of community. And I want you to buy a t-shirt, but then also be able to understand why that design is on that t-shirt. Right. And it's the same thing with those guys. I mean, they're telling stories and building a brand and, carrying the torch forward, even if the game has quote unquote changed, then, that's okay. But sorry, rabbit hole and tangent, but
that's totally great though, because I think that's important because, one of the things that I find myself constantly battling with sneakers is the negativity that seems to be most prominent on the internet, right? And, you know, using Fomer or Jacques or any of the guys that are, you know, any of the people that are cranking out YouTube videos on a regular basis, right? The perception is that the comments section is always negative. But I find that when I'm in the comments on some of these people's YouTube channels, they have like just massive amounts of supporters that know every detail about what they do, how they do their thing, the you know, the stories that they're telling, the journeys that they're taking them on, the people that are doing, you know, some of these guys are doing, I was watching a Seth Fowler video recently, and, you know, he does this series where he's like, I'm going to take $20 and I'm eventually going to get a pair of Nike mags from, you know, I'm going to trade my way up and buy my way up. And like, that's such a great way for somebody to become, you know, just feel like they're on that journey with you. And
yeah,
I've probably watched like maybe a dozen of them, and he's done a lot of them, but like, I still find it fascinating every time I come back to his channel and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, time to see where he's at in this journey, you know? And I was thinking about it the other day, because there was just some nice comments on a video that I came across. And it's interesting because it's almost like NikeTalk in a sense. Back in the early days of NikeTalk, you had a much tighter sense of community amongst all of those people supporting each other in ways that just doesn't seem to exist now. But I think it does exist. It's just that it's moved into different places, right? Like, our Sneaker History Discord is very, like, I mean, there are people in there that are, you know, calling in to be a part of our Zoom calls, our community Zoom calls and trivia nights from, you know, we've had Madison Square Garden, we've had from the wedding, after party, we've had people just, you know, like places where I'm like, you should not be thinking about all us folks in this community right now. You should be doing your own thing, you know? Yeah. But I love that because they all care about each other enough to be like, you know, oh yes, I forgot, Andrew in the Discord, literally the first night bought his first house, you know, like we were all on a call, like getting to walk through the house with him, you know, like stuff like that. Where, yeah, you're getting to share these experiences, and part of that's amplified from the pandemic and people not getting to have as much social interaction as they did, you know, prior, but also we just all care about each other deeply. And I think that happens the same way it happened for Bobby in, you know, the NikeTalk forums, and like posting up a pair of shoes and a sneaker and a t-shirt and like connecting the dots for people, and then having all those people go, oh, cool, I need to get that one because it resonates with me.
Yep.
The same thing is probably happening. You know, you and I have talked about this about Jacques' videos. Jacques is one of those people that he's got a much younger demographic watching him on YouTube than I think a lot of the sneaker YouTubers. And you see it when you go to a sneaker con with him and all the parents are thanking him for making the videos, because it's the 13-year-old now that's looking at Jacques' video, and they're not thinking necessarily about like maybe buying and selling, or maybe they are, but they're thinking, I could make YouTube videos at SneakerCon, and then I could do what Jacques Slade does. And I think that is like such an awesome thing to kind of connect the dots along, you know, the journey, because ultimately it comes down to like the same kind of vibe that you're looking for, is like just how to make your way in this space, and you know, you find the people that are going to support you. So I think, you know, I want to kind of circle back too, because one, I think we should just put it out in the universe and be like, the NikeTalk, you know, I don't know, the class reunion or whatever it's going to be called needs to happen. But you mentioned a few pretty good stories before we started recording that I think we should jump into. So I'll let you decide which one you want to share or which couple you want to share. But I know you've got plenty of them, and we can go probably all night, but I'll let you decide which one you should start off with.
Man, well, I'll tell you, the one that still haunts me to this day is when I got a pair of shoes stolen from me. And I'm trying to remember, man, I think they were Air Jordan 16, like a look-see sample. I think this was around the time Jordan had either come back to play for the Wizards, but they were kind of an off cream white with a little bit of the Wizard blue in there, unreleased, never came out. Was told maybe one or two pairs of these exist all time, right? And so, I mean, for those that may not know, I mean, what would happen is, you know, Jordan would actually come to campus, Nike campus, and they'd put a bunch of colorways in front of him and basically, yep, nope, yep, maybe, let's change this, let's do this. And then all the ones that he didn't like, they'd just scrap them, right? So this is one of those, never came out. And I had them on my website for sale. And I think the asking price was like $1,500. And so I get an email, hey man, I'll take them. Can I PayPal you, and do you mind overnight shipping them? Okay, no problem. I'll pay the extra. This guy offered to pay the extra for overnight shipping. And again, I'm 15, 16 now, and, very trusting, never got ripped off before. And I'm like, cool, man, like no red flags are going off for me. Okay, you're going to pay for overnight shipping, all this. Well, the guy he had hacked into a PayPal account, and he had used somebody else's PayPal account to send me the money. And then he told me, hey, I'm, staying at my grandmother's house. Can you send them to this address? Again, 15 years old, naive. Sure, I'll send them to your grandmother's house. So I overnight the shoes, right? And this dude was smart. I overnight them. And by the time, I overnighted them and he already gotten them, 48 hours later, PayPal sends me an email saying, we've marked this transaction as fraud. Please do not send, the goods that you sold this person. They used a fraudulent account, or they hacked into an account. Like, we took this money out of your PayPal account. Money's gone. Shoes are gone. And immediately, I'm, trying to chat this dude, email him, whatever, crickets, obviously. Well, one, I thought I was going to be smart and set up a sting operation and actually had someone else pretend that they had a pair of shoes for sale. And then this is the beauty of the internet, right? And somebody else, I think on NikeTalk or something, the details are a little fuzzy, but basically we were going to set up a sting, sell this dude another pair of shoes, and have cops waiting for him when he came and picked him up at the post office or whatever. We ended up not doing that. Thank goodness. But about a week later, this random box shows up on my doorstep at my parents' house. It looks like a pair of shoes, size of a shoebox. And I'm like, I'm not expecting anything. Well, it's a little beat up, and I take it inside, and I kid you not, this story is not embellished. I literally, I'm standing probably as far as I can away from this box, and I'm like, could I be bombable? Is somebody sending me, a bomb inside of this shoe? No, 15 years old kid that's selling sneakers online, you're not bombable. But so I kid you not, man, I kind of take a knife and unwrap it or whatever, and I go get a broomstick from the pantry. And I remember going halfway up the banister on the stairs, and I'm trying to pry open the lid with a broomstick, to make sure nothing's going to explode inside. And I pop open the lid, and the shoes are sitting inside, the ones that this guy had stole, with a note. And I was like, holy cow. There's no way. This is nuts. This guy sent back a $1,500 pair of shoes that he had stole. And, and the note said, hey man, feel guilty. Wanted to send them back. Feel super guilty. I'm sorry. And send them back. But the kicker is that he had warned them. He had gone to the mall or something, worn them. So I ended up being able to sell them for a little bit of money, but definitely not $1,500. But yeah, dude, I still just think about that story, and I'm like, man, I never would have, he never would have gotten caught. I never would have gotten them or whatever. But just the fact that he felt guilty and sent them back is nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy. He just needed that one "What did you wear today?" picture in the NikeTalk thread, right? So,
yeah,
he got that picture, and then he was like, I'm over it.
Yep.
I got my street
post.
Cred.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Got my post. And see, again, nothing's changed. People did we can't get mad. Yeah. I can't get mad at people take a photo on Instagram, send it to StockX and sell it. And that's we did that too, right? It's the whole reason you had
NDS.
Yeah. Worn inside, one time, no creases, only worn inside and cleaned. Yeah, you can still see the sizing tag on the insole on the inside, like VVVVV NDS. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too now because like I haven't, what's the best way to say this? I haven't embraced letting go of most of my sneakers yet, right? So I still have way too many. I say it all the time on this show, but like I don't advise anybody to buy sneakers. Like you'll always have enough if you have a couple of pairs here and there. But most of the time I wear like the one pair that's by the door.
Yep.
And, you know, if it weren't for the community aspect of it and like sharing stuff, we do some things now where, you know, like you might see a particular topic for like, you know, Thursdays. So we'll do like a whole theme where the community will be like, this is my favorite, you know, 3M shoe, or this is my favorite, you know, Jordan before the 14 or whatever that is. But I think about now, like, I don't remember if I wore a lot of shoes because, you know, it's like, okay, like I have Dunks from the early 2000s. I probably wore them, but I don't know if I wore them, you know, and like if I can't see something stuck in the bottom of it, do I even know if I wore the shoe? Like there's no way for me to actually know, you know, like most of the stuff I didn't wear enough to crease up at all. I mean, I try to keep them nice, but like I'm not very good at cleaning them. So most of the time that's why I end up wearing the same shoe regularly, because I'm like, this will be the shoe that gets beat up and I'll keep the others a little bit nicer, you know?
Yep.
It's interesting things that only sneakerheads would understand, you know, like.
Oh my goodness, dude. A lot of fun facts about me that you didn't ask, but I'll tell you, I have never played, other than maybe when I was like in elementary school, any organized basketball. You know, never played on middle school basketball team, high school basketball team. I'm the white kid from Indianapolis, Indiana. You know, my feet are very wide and flat, so Nikes actually kill my feet. And let's see. I barely ever, like, I played baseball and tennis growing up. I'm the complete opposite of everything that you would ever think a sneakerhead would be. But I still have like over like 150 pairs sitting in the closet that barely ever saw the light of day. And I think I was sitting in a meeting when I was at ForceField with Finish Line one time, and basically out loud just said, I'm probably the only sneakerhead that I know of that listens to 90s country music. Like, it's just, I'm the opposite of everything you would ever think. But that's the beauty of everything also, is that you can be completely different, but yet because you enjoy the sneakers and the stories behind them and all that, like, it's just that connection piece. But I also was the guy that would wear the trash shoes when it was raining and then keep the nice shoes in the backpack in, you know, middle school, and then change when you got into middle school, and people are like, what are you doing? Like, this is nuts. Like, you're a little weird.
Yep. Totally. I mean, that's how it always is though, right? Like if you're not a little weird to most people, then, you know, you're probably in the wrong spot, or you probably need to like look at that and think, if everybody thinks I'm not weird, then maybe that's a problem. Yeah. Man, well, I mean, we're about coming up on an hour. It's been awesome to chat with you. You know, we definitely got to do this more frequently. I know we'll talk offline, but you know, this is a blast, and I'm sure, you know, you've got way more stories to share with people. Hopefully, you know, like if there's anything, if anything comes of that talk of some sort of NikeTalk, you know, get together. Oh yeah. Of any kind, definitely let me know. And like, cause the people that are listening to this, I'm sure would be totally interested in something like that. I think, you know, there's a huge community out there that, you know, I'm one of those weird old dudes that loves the sneaker cons, because I just love seeing the excitement that everybody brings to those places. But I think generally there's definitely room for a more laid back, like kind of old, you know, kind of the way, like, you know, not to be cliche, but the way it used to be, right? Yeah. Where, you know, NikeTalk meetups were like, they were life-changing experiences for a lot of us, you know, like you would meet 5 or 6 people from the forums, and next thing you know, you're like, cool, like now I've got friends that are into shoes and cars and this and that and the other. So I'm definitely down to support and be a part of and help out however I can to make that happen.
Yeah, it's
I think
interesting.
It would be really awesome.
It's funny you say that because I literally picture the only thing we need to do for a NikeTalk like old school reunion is literally get a warehouse and, you know, maybe one with a giant skate ramp in the back. I don't know. And maybe the giant, you know, atom bomb and the hundreds logo. But besides that, all we really need is, to be honest with you, is an empty room with some folding chairs. And like, I think you could just get like almost like a singer-songwriter night where somebody gets up there and just tells a story for 5-10 minutes, and then you just rotate through and everybody just tells stories about the old days and old school, and then just kind of hang out and sit in folding chairs. And like, you don't need the flashy sneaker con for this group. Like, all you need is an empty room and folding chairs and you're good.
Yeah, totally. Yep, totally. Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. But we'll definitely let people know how to find you too, if they want to hit you up to hear more of the stories and connect with you outside of the podcast here.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's probably the easiest way. It's at WIll Hardison, and then Instagram as well. You're just going to see a lot of family photos, barely any sneaker photos, but you're welcome to follow me there. And then I also write for DTLR, so I write about 4 to 5 blogs a month on just upcoming releases and stuff like that. And I try to weave in some of the sneaker stories into those blogs as well. But Twitter's probably the easiest way to kind of connect and start a chat.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you making the time. You know, it's been, like I said, long overdue. Thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, man.
Everybody that's listening, I will put links to Will's social handles in the description as well, so you can connect with him that way. But yeah, any last parting words of advice for anybody?
Oh man, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I know we've talked about this for a while, and this certainly is that just rekindling, just memory lane and all that. I mean, like you said, I've kind of moved on and work in a completely different industry, and outside of you and Jacques, kind of just keep my distance from sneakers and all that, not for any wrong reason or whatever, but that's just the way life goes. Right. But I don't know, man. I mean, honestly, like, I think anything and just the parting words for me would be whatever you want to go do, like, just take a stab at it. Just do it. Don't worry about what people would say about it or think about it. Whether that you want to, launch a YouTube channel or create a Substack or whatever it may be. I think the coolest thing that I take away from my childhood is I just tried stuff, did stuff, not to try to grow some following or anything like that. I just did it because I wanted to have fun and wanted to figure it out. So I think if you kind of stay true to that and do something of that realm and just do it for the right reasons, everything else will take care of itself, man.
Well said, man. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify or Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more content coming for you in 2022. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in the Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is the connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions we have in common with other people within the community. We recently launched the first of a handful of new podcasts that will be coming directly from our sneaker history community. We'll get into the details for those in a future episode, but I'm excited to share that the Exhaust Notes podcast is now live. This is a show about the world of cars, racing, and other automotive-related topics. If you're a fan of Formula One, Formula Drift, cars and coffee, or you're just a weirdo like me that enjoys the smell of gasoline, I think you'll enjoy this one. If you do, add Exhaust Notes to your subscribe list so you'll be updated when we drop future episodes. As always, thank you for supporting Sneaker History, and don't forget to tell someone you like their kicks today. Peace. Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify and Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more video content coming soon. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in our Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is a connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions that we have in common with each other. We recently launched a couple of new podcasts directly from our community. One of them is a Formula One podcast. If you're an F1 fan like me, the Exhaust Notes podcast is your weekly fix of Formula One fun. It's hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates. New episodes drop every Tuesday.
I've been wearing fitted hats for years and collecting my favorite teams since I was a little leaguer. It has been awesome to see so many new fans getting into fitteds in recent years. Crown and Stitch is our new talk show about fitted hats with Dexter, Keith, and myself, where we talk about fitted hats, snapbacks, throw in some obscure hats because we all kind of like some funky stuff once in a while, don't we? Copping, collecting, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Hit the links in the show notes for this episode to give our new shows a listen, and be on the lookout for more new podcasts dropping soon. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.